हीनाक्षरसमाम्नायमधिगम्य महेश्वरात् कृत्स्नं व्याकरणं प्रोक्तं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः। वाक्यकारं वरर्ज्यं भाष्यकारं पतञ्जलिं पाणिनिं सूत्रकारं च प्रणतोऽस्मि मुनित्रयं। नत्वा सरस्वतीं देवीं शुद्धां गुण्यां करोम्यहं पाणिनीयप्रवेशाय लघुसिद्धान्तकौमुदी। Any questions on previous week before we move ahead?
I have a question. The Hakara Dvayam is justified, convinced, very beautifully explained. But in Pratyahara, why should we say Hal? Why can't
That's a good
we
question.
why
Why
can't
can't
we
we say
explain
her?
and say yes? Yar or include the second ha and exclude the first one.
Correct.
Hal
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. Yeah, and it has been discussed again and again because it is so obvious question and it should get to come to everybody's mind. The answer is this. There is no real reason of including her. It is as much possible to say her instead of her. The problem is if you say her, a second question immediately comes up. Why is the second hakara excluded? Is it different than the first hakara? Are there two different types of hakaras? Was there a minor difference between the two hakaras because of which Panini was forced to ignore the second hakara? So these are even more complex questions that come up. In order to avoid these questions and keep things simple, he simply included both the hakaras, adding redundancy. Having redundancy is easier to explain than leaving out a letter and then constantly saying that no, the hakara that has been left out is same as the old hakara and so on. Okay.
Thank you. Dhanyawad.
So Sudha Teekayaam Prathamam Sutram Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudyam Prathamam Sutram Halantyam iti Prathamadhyayasya Tritiya Padasya Tritiyam Sutram Halantyam. Before any sutra is taken up for the discussion, there is a habit that we want to enter. There are two things that we want to discuss for any sutra before we even start with the commentary. First is the Padacheda or Sutra Cheda. Break down the sutra into individual components. If there are samasas, break the samasas down, understand the vibhakti, vachana, understand the meaning of each word. Second is the Uddesha Vidheya Bhava. What is Uddesha and what is Vidheya? These are two fundamental things. Unless we look at both these things, we should never enter the study of any sutra. So let's start with Halantyam. How do we break down Halantyam?
Hal Antyam.
Hal Antyam. So what vibhakti is Hala?
Prathama ekavachanam asti.
Prathama ekvachanam asti. What vibhakti is Antyam?
Antyam api prathama
Prathama
ekavachanam
ekvachanam.
bhavet.
So Hal Antyam. So there is no need to have any kind of samasa over here. Or you can have a karmadharaya samasa visheshana vishesha bhava asti. Hal yat kidrusham hal tad hal yad antyam. Okay. So either it's normal two words or you can consider it as a samasa. Hal antyam. Hal is prathama ekvachanam. Antyam is prathama ekvachanam. How is the word antyam created?
Antah tatra tadhita bhavati.
Kidrushah tadhita pratyayah.
Yat.
What is the sutram? Digadibhyo yat. We studied this. Okay.
Yes.
So ante bhavaha antyah digadibhyo yat. Digadibhyo yat iti sutram. Yat iti pratyaya bhavati. There must be anta somewhere here. Okay. Ante bhavaha antyah. The Ganapatha says anta as one of the words. So ante bhavaha antyah hal antyam. Okay. What is the Uddesha over here? Uddesha is the entity that we are talking about. What is the Uddesha? Hal is the Uddesha. We are talking about an Hal entity. The Uddesha is characterized by the Visheshanam called Antyam. Which Hal? Not all the Hals in the world. Antyam Hal. What is the Vidheya?
Antyam.
Antyam, I just mentioned, it is the Visheshana. It is the one that qualifies Hal. Out of so many halas, which is the hala that we are talking about? The last one. So it is Visheshana. What is the Vidheya? Vidheya is something that you are mentioning or you are giving a new information about. It, correct. So it comes as an anuvritti from Upadeshaya Janunasika it, that becomes your Vidheya. So understand this. As soon as you understand Uddesha and Videya, the sutra becomes extremely clear. Uddesha is Hala, the entity that you are talking about. Videya is Ita, the new information that you are providing. So Hala Antyam indicates that a terminal Hala letter becomes Itsamyaka. This is the general meaning of the sutra. कीदृशः अन्त्यः हल् वर्णः is every terminal हल पठितुम् इत्यत्र विद्यमानः मकारः इत्सम्यकः अस्ति वा कीदृशः नो चेत् कुत्र विद्यमानः अन्तिमः हल् वर्णः Upadeshe. That comes as an anuvritti from the previous sutram. That's exactly what Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi starts with. Upadeshe antyam hal itsyat. The same thing has been discussed in Sudha Teeka. Adyocharana vishayibhutaha yaha shabdaha. So Upadesha has been defined immediately in Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi as Upadesha Adyocharanam. This word Adyocharanam can be broken down into two ways. One as a Shashti Tatpurusha Samasa. Adyanam Ucharanam Adyocharanam. Who is Adya? The beginning people of Vyakarana Shastra. Who are the beginning people of Vyakarana Shastra?
Maheshwara.
Patanjali.
Before Panini?
Maheshwara.
Maheshwara. We have to start with Shiva because Ayuda is dedicated to him. So Shiva, Panini, Katyayana, Patanjali, four of them. So Adyanam Ucharanam, whatever has been told, Ucharana does not necessarily mean pronunciation. It means whatever has been mandated, whatever has been told by them as original entities. Adyanam Ucharanam, Adyocharanam. This is one way to divide the samasa, Shashti Tatpurusha Samasa. Second way to divide this samasa is the normal Karmadharaya Samasa. Adyam Chatat Ucharanam. The beginning statements. Again, Munitraya is there because they are, or the four people including Shiva are always there because they are at the root of the Vyakarana Shastra. But their initial pronunciations, they might have told anything further, but the initial things that they told in the Vyakarana Shastra are to be considered as Upadesha. So he says, Adyocharana Vishayi Bhutaha. What is Vishayi Bhutaha? There is a Chri Pratyaya over there. Avishayaha, Vishayaha, Bhutaha. Something that was not into existence earlier, but it came into existence because of these 3-4 people. So, Adyocharanena Vishayi Bhutaha. Because of this initial pronunciation, it became the matter of thinking, it became the matter of contemplation. So Adyocharanena Vishayibhutaha came into existence by Adyocharanam. That is nothing but an Upadesha. Tadrishaha yaha shabdaha tasya antyam hal itsamyakaha syat iti phalitaha arthaha is the first line in Sudha Teeka. What is Adyocharanam? He immediately clarifies Adyanam ityukte Shivapanini Prabhutinam. He does not start with Panini. Observe this. Shivapanini Prabhutinam Adyocharanam Upadeshaha Yadva. So this is the Shashti Tatpurusha. Yadva Adyancha Taducharanam. This is the second method, Karmadharya Samasa. Adyamcha Taducharanam Prathamam Ucharanam Ityarthaha Shivapanini Prabhutinam Adyam Ucharanam Upadeshaha. So Upadesha is like the first statements spoken by all these Munitrayas and including Shiva. Clear? And then he explains the Karika further. Dhatu Sutra Ganonadi Vakyalinganushasnam Agama Pratyayadeshaha Upadeshaha Prakirtitaha. Kechitu. Some people believe this. This Karika is originally given in the Prakriya Kaumudi. Prakriya Kaumudi is a separate Prakriya Grantha. In that Grantha, this Karika was given. So some people believe this particular Karika is another way to define the Upadesha. How do we define the Upadesha? Basically, list of entities. Dhatu, all the 2000 dhatus, they are originally told by Panini. So Upadesha. Sutra, all the Ashtadhyayi Sutras. Gana, the Gana Patha, Sarvadi Gana, Chadi Gana, and so on. We have a separate Gana Patha on the website. You should take a look at it if it's not seen. Dhatu, Sutra, Gana, Unadi. Unadi Patha. Vakya is Vartika, all the Vartikas, not just Sutras, but the Vartikas. And Linganushasana. We also have a separate Linganushasana. This Linganushasana, it talks about the gender of various words. So Dhatu, Sutra, Gana, Unadi, Vakya, Linganushasanam, Agama, Agamas, Pratyayas, and Adeshas. All these are called Upadeshas. Etesham Sarvesham Upadesha iti samnya bhavati. Clear? Ironically, it turns out that in Praudhamanorama, what is Praudhamanorama? It is a commentary on Siddhanta Kaumudi written by Bhattoji Dikshita himself. Bhattoji Dikshita writes Siddhanta Kaumudi, then he writes his own commentary on Siddhanta Kaumudi, which is Praudhamanorama. In Praudhamanorama, Bhattoji Dikshita refutes this Karika. He says this Karika is useless. He says this, it doesn't say it's incorrect. He says this is useless. This is not how a scholar should talk about. Can somebody think and tell me why Bhattoji Dikshita might refute this Karika? What are the typical objections that Bhattoji Dikshita might have on this Karika? I mean, he says this is but obvious. You don't have to say this. Why would he say that? Instead of saying Adyocharanam, which is basically a very vague statement, this is actually a very nice listing. What all is an Upadesha? Dhatu is an Upadesha, Gana is an Upadesha, Sutra is an Upadesha. So it's actually a very beautiful listing. And Bhattoji Dikshita says this is not how one should define it. Why?
Is it because it is only limited to Vyakarana Shastra and nowhere else?
Very nice. So we are actually talking in the framework of Vyakarana Shastra. So restricting ourselves in the framework of Vyakarana Shastra, is this Karika an appropriate description of the word Upadesha? So the reason why Bhattoji Dikshita says that this Karika is not very apt is because it is full of redundancy. Same thing has been told again and again and again. If I say all Brahmins should come and have lunch, I don't have to call each Brahmin separately. Vasishtha, you come, Devadatta, you come, Yajnadatta, you come. In the first statement, everything is clear. Now you see in this Karika, he talks about Sutra. Is Unadi not a Sutra? It is a Sutra. Is Linganushasanam not a Sutra? It is a Sutra. Isn't it? I don't know if people have seen the Linganushasanam, but if you go to this Linganushasanam, it's basically a list of sutras, right? So as soon as you say Sutram, Unadi is included in it, Linganushasanam is included in it. As soon as you say Gana, Dhatus are actually included in it because Dhatu Patha is nothing but 10 Ganas from Bhwadi, Adadi up to Churadi. So other than 10 Ganas, there is nothing in the Dhatu Patha. So as soon as you use the word Gana, Dhatus are included. As soon as you use the word Sutra, Vakya is included. Sorry, Unadi Patha is included. Linganushasanam is included. All these things are already included. So if you want to give an explicit, specific definition of Upadesha, you should give something which is not redundant. There are lots of redundant things present in this particular Karika. That is his take. We are not saying that is a Siddhanta or anything. I'm just putting different pakshas in front of you. Therefore, Bhattoji Dikshita, I think he says this Adirantyena Saheta. Let's take an example. Let's take a quick look. Look at this. Yattu Dhatu Sutra Ityadi Pathanti. Whosoever talks about that Karika, Dhatu Sutra, and so on. Unadilingan yoho api sutratvat siddhe. Unadi Patha and Linganushasana both are included as soon as you say Sutra. So Pruthak Upadanam Vyartham is what he's saying. Pruthak Upadanam is separate mention, is useless. Pruthak Upadanam Vyartham. Evameva Ganatva Siddhe Dhatoho Pruthak Upadanam Vyartham. As soon as you say Gana, Dhatu is included. As soon as you say Sutra, Unadi Patha is included, Linganushasana is included, and so on. So Go Balir Vadanyayena. Basically, it says that if I ask you bring all the cows to a shed, I don't have to tell you bring Kapila cow separately and bring another cow separately and this cow separately and that cow separately. As soon as you say cow, all the cows are included. So as soon as you say Sutra, all the Sutra types are included. As soon as you say Gana, all the entities that contain Gana are included. and so on. Therefore, in Praudha Manorama, in the Sutram Adinantena Sahita, he ends up refuting this Karika. Clear? But even whether he refutes or not, let's actually take a look at this particular Karika and understand a little bit more about this. In this Karika, he has listed a bunch of entities. He, in the sense, the author of the Karika, has listed a bunch of entities and called each of them Upadesha. Let's look at this word Upadesha and understand what it exactly means, how it is derived in itself. So the word Upadesha can be derived in 2 or 3 different ways. One is an Vyutpatti using the Karana Karaka. Upadishyate anena iti upadeshaha. The sadhana of telling something. A simple example is sutram. A sutram is directly not used anywhere in the derivation. It mandates a vidhi, and that vidhi is used in the further derivation. So sutram is actually a sadhana of the entire Vyakarana Shastra. It's not the sadhya, it's the sadhana of the Vyakarana Shastra. So upadishyate anena iti upadeshaha. On the other hand, there is another Vyutpatti which says whatever is mandated, upadishyate saha upadeshaha. So an example is adesha, agama, pratyaya. So something that is directly mandated to you is an upadesha. So this way there are 2 different vyutpattis of the word upadesha. Some people, or in some cases, it is used to represent the instrument, the karana. In some other cases, it is used to represent the object. And both these definitions are actually included in this karika. So dhatu, sutra, gana, unati, vartika, and linganushasana all adhere to the karana vyutpatti. Upadishyate anena. All these are the instruments of the upadesha. Dhatu patha, gana patha, sutra patha, vartika patha, linganushasana patha. So all these are patha, patha, patha. I'm explicitly using that word over here because a patha is basically an instrument of upadesha. A dhatu patha will give the upadesha of dhatus. A sutra patha will give the upadesha of sutras. A unadi patha will give the upadesha of different type of sutras. So they are the karana, they are the sadhanas of the upadesha. In the second pankti, it is all the objects of the upadesha. Agama is not agama patha, is individual agamas. Pratyayas is the individual pratyayas. Adesha is the individual adeshas. So the karika has been constructed in such a beautiful manner. In the first pankti, it's all karanas which are being called as upadeshas, the sadhanas. Upadeshyate anena iti upadeshaha. In the second pankti, all the objects, karma is being called as upadesha. So upadeshyate iti upadesha. Clear? And you can have a bhavi derivation also. Upadeshyate, the action of mandating something is also upadesha. Upadeshyate iti upadesha. So upadeshyate anena iti upadesha. Upadeshyate yat tad upadesha. Nochet upadeshyate iti upadesha. Just like pathyate iti pathaha, bhave ghvi pratyay is possible. In the same way, upadeshyate iti upadesha, which includes a single, line description of all of these. Clear? So these are the 3 different pakshas of the word upadesha. These are the 3 different vyutpattis of the word upadesha, which have been discussed again and again at length in the commentaries. We will not go in any further details. We want to restrict ourselves to Sudha Teeka, but I just give you a glimpse of what commentaries talk about. They take this word upadesha, they dissect it into various types of methods. So this is also there in Praudha Manorama as in the same place. For example, see karana vyutpatya. What is karana vyutpatya? Using it as an instrument, using it as a karana. So he talks about karana vyutpatya. He also talks about karma vyutpatti. He talks about vyutpatti using the bhava form and so on. So all this has already been discussed in various commentaries. We just need to understand at this stage there are 3 different ways of discussing or dissecting the word upadesha: karma vyutpatti, bhava vyutpatti, and karana vyutpatti. Any further questions on this?
The difference between the Karana Vyutpatti and the Bhava Vyutpatti, if you were to understand it using English, which will limit it, Upadishyate yat, so whatever is being Upadishyate, and Bhava is the action of the upadishyate. Is that
Yes,
how
but
one has to?
upadishyate yat is not karana vyutpatti. It is karma vyutpatti. It is
Karma,
indicating the
sorry.
karma. Karana
Karma.
vyutpatti is upadishyate anena iti upadeshaha.
Anena.
And bhava is exactly what you said. Upadeshanam iti upadeshaha. The act of giving an upadesha is upadesha. Okay, correct. So let's read this whole thing once again. उपदेशे अन्त्यमिति आद्योच्चारण विषयीभूतः यः शब्दः तस्य अन्त्यं हल इत्सम्यकः स्यात् इति फलितः अर्थः आद्योच्चारणं टू वेज आद्यानां शिवपाणिनि प्रभृतीनाम् उच्चारणं यद्वा आद्यं च तदुच्चारणम् इति आद्योच्चारणं प्रथमम् उच्चारणं शिवपाणिति प्रभृतीनाम् आद्यम् उच्चारणम् केचित्तु धातुसूत्रगणोनादिवाक्यलिङ्गानुशासनम् आगमप्रत्ययादेशाः उपदेशाः प्रकीर्तिताः इत्याहुः. So Halantyam Sutram starts by saying that this is an absolutely useless sutram. Why it is a useless sutram? Because this Antyam word is very weird. What is Antyam? It is an ending point, the last one. So I will define what is the last. If I take the word tumun, na is last. But if I take the fragment tumu, who is last? If I take the fragment tuma, is tuma, just the tuma, is it an upadesha or not? It is an upadesha, isn't it? When the pratyaya tumun was told, I'm not removing u, na, anything. I'm just saying the pratyaya tumun as it is. And I take the first initial fragment called tuma. Just forget u and no. It's not going away anywhere. It's still there. I just don't account for it. If I just say tuma, is it an upadesha or not? Was it spoken by Panini? Yes. So it is an upadesha. So what is the last letter of tuma? It is ma. Get rid of it by halantyam. In this way, every letter will go away by halantyam, making vyakarana shastra null and void. You understand the argument that is being talked over here? We are just saying upadesha. If the entire sutram is upadesha, each small component of that sutram is upadesha, which means that you take anything. I mean, ta is also an upadesha. Get rid of takara. So that's exactly how the halantyam sutram actually starts in the bhashya. See the first line of the bhashya, halantye sarva prasangaha sarvasya halaha itsamnya prapnuti. What are you talking about the last letter? Every letter can be considered last. Katham sarva antyatva. Every letter can be considered a last letter if you just change your perspective. And nobody tells me how to define my perspective. Panini just says antyam hala. So let me put a specific perspective over there. Sarvaha hi hal. All the hal letters. Antam avadhim. Till that point. Tam avadhim means that is your boundary. In the tumun, if you go till ma and stop there, till that avadhi, till that boundary, it is antya. So get rid of ma, get rid of na, get rid of ta, everything. So entire Vyakarana Shastra is null and void. So therefore, this is not a correct way of writing the sutram. This is not an apt way of explaining what you want to talk about. Sarvasya halaha itsamnya prapnoti kim karanam sarva antyatvat. Everything is end from a certain perspective. And therefore, how does he resolve it? He said, well, agreed, everything is end, but when everything is end, what you will do? You will find the one that is the end of all the ends. The topmost. If everybody is a topper in the class, and if you want to give a prize, you will probably do a conflict resolution in a different way. Like probably look at the marks of unit test, or look at how their overall performance in the year is, how active they were in the class, and so on. You have to choose one. Vyakarana Shastra won't become null and void. That's the bottom line. You have to choose one. So how will you choose one? You choose the best of the best. Of all are best, choose even the best on that. This is called prakarsha gati. He uses a very beautiful word over here. Prakarsha gati. Prakarsha is all of you are good, but who is even best amongst you? Prakarshena kaha antyaha. Everybody understands the meaning of the word prakarsha. Prakarshena kaha antyaha. Even over there, who gets that property, who gets that term in a more specific manner? Sadhiyaha yaha antyaha, the one who is actually physically placed at the end. So when you have all these entities at the end, find a word, find one of those which is actually also present at the end of the word. So not just end of a certain perspective, but also at the end of the entire word, that is prakarsha gatihi. Select the best among the best and remove it by halantyam. This is the way he saves the sutram. This is the Bhashyakara. He saves the sutram. The Purva Paksha is refuting, saying the sutra is nonsense. Every letter can be Antya. Then the Bhashyakara saves the sutram by saying, he doesn't say the argument is wrong. He says the argument is correct. But when you are faced with such a dilemma, such a trouble, one choice is to make the Vyakarana Shastra null and void, which is nonsense. We are all here to study the Vyakarana Shastra. So second is make the best meaning out of it. So what is the best meaning out of it? Out of all those end, which is the real end, which can also be considered as end of the entire Upadesha, that is the actual end one. This is called best of best. The Sanskrit word for this is prakarsha gati. This is a technique used by Bhashyakara to justify the correctness or validity of the Sutram Halantyam.
And Sadhiyaha?
Atyantam sadhu, the best of the best. That's exactly the meaning. Sadhu is good, the best of the best. Atyantam sadhu. Yeah. Atishayen sadhu. So that's it. So Prakarshagati has been explained as saying best of the best. Sadhiyaha Antyaha.
So then we have some exceptions like for the quick pratyaya, like it's a more than one, right?
But you use halantyam only for one, right? Kvip halantyam is only, we are only talking about the sutram halantyam. Halantyam can only get rid of per. Ka gets goes away by lashakvatadite, which is different. Okay.
Yeah.
But saying the part of Upadesha also as Upadesha is a little convoluted, right, Mahoday? So Ramaha is a padam, but Rama does not get a padasamya. It gets only the
Because the difference is the way pada is defined. Pada is defined as suptingantam padam. Is Rama subantam? No. So it cannot get a padasamya. Whereas Upadesha is defined as anything that is uttered by Panini. When Panini utters tumun, does he utter tum? He does, right? How can he utter tumun without uttering tum? So if he utters tum is an Upadesha. Clear? So there is a fundamental difference between the Padasamya and the Upadesha.
So what he's basically saying is, like for example, if we take Vriddhi Radhaich, so this Aich will go, then Vriddhi Dha will go, Va will go. So to avoid that is why he is saying Sadhiya.
That is correct. The best of the best. The Sadhya is the actual end one. Correct. See, study of Purva Paksha in Vyakarana Shastra is also extremely fascinating because it opens our minds to various aspects which are not even imaginable in our dreams, right? So understanding that the word Upadesha can be interpreted in such a beautiful manner that each letter can actually become an end is a fascinating discovery in its own. And then it gets refuted by Bhashyakara by saying Sadhiyaha. Prakarshagati. This word has to be remembered. Prakarshagati, very beautiful word.
Any other places where we see Prakarshagati?
Vyaktavacham samucharane, he uses Prakarshagati. Akhyatopayoge, he uses Prakarshagati. Parasanikarsha samhita, he uses Prakarshagati. So lots of places he uses this Prakarshagati. Okay.
Okay.
Very common technique, it seems. But thank you for asking. I had never done this search earlier.
And the Karika is helping us to say what is Upadesha, not just anything, any word or anything, right? Like it has to be either a dhatu or agama or adesha. It's if you say tum, it's not anything, right? Only tuman will be a pratyaya, and that has to be considered. So yeah, I don't know why they would take in between without taking the whole thing. So.
Because this Karika, Dhatu Sutra Ganunadi, let's see if this Karika is there in the Bhashya. This is not in the Bhashya. So this is written in one of the recent granthas in 17th century or something. So Dhatu Sutra Ganonati, I don't think it is there in the Bhashya anywhere about specific
प्रौढमनोरमायां तु अस्ति महोदय.
Prauda Manorama is some 16th century. So 15th, 16th century is not we are talking. Bhashya is written in 200 BC. So when Bhashya was written, this particular Karika was not something that was formalized definition of Upadesha. The definition of Upadesha that was accepted at that point in time was whatever has been told by Panini, not even Mahabhashya, because Bhashyakara was writing the Bhashya. So whatever has been written by Panini. So these all the things they talk about Vakya and so on, these won't be available at the time of the Bhashyakara. Now we have formalized it by saying Dhatu Sutra Gandunadi after looking at the Bhashya and after studying all this detailed discussion. Clear? Is the chronology making sense? Like we are using a Siddhanta that came later to refute something that was there in the Bhashya earlier. That's not how the Shastra should work. You study Bhashya and then come up with this Karika which captures the essence of the Bhashya. So we are not saying that the Karika is wrong. We are just saying, and even Dikshita does not say that the Karika is wrong. He says it's not the it's not a scientific way or it's not the best way of explaining what an Upadesha is. That's all that he's trying to say.
Yeah, he talks about the redundancy, but then like for an example, Paniniya Siksha, I don't know if that is also of sutrams, is it? Like Paniniya Siksha?
It's shlokas. Atha shiksham pravakshami. So it's
So that's
sutra. It's
also
shlokas.
Adyocharanam
That's
told
also
by
no.
Panini, but we don't, consider
Panini
that.
Shiksha was not told by Panini. Panini Shiksha is just created by one of his students as he learned from Panini. So, Atha Shiksham Pravakshami Paniniyam Matam Yatha. So, whatever has been is the Panini's mata. I'm telling you that is all that he says.
This Harivarna removal one by one, the Vitvam we have this Lakshye Lakshanam Sakriteva Pravartate. So how can we keep on removing the Halvarnas?
You are not removing Halvarna one by one. In one Upadesha, only one Halvarna is being removed. The problem is the definition of Upadesha is changing. Tuma is Upadesha, Ma gets removed. Tumun is Upadesha, Na gets removed. Ta is Upadesha, Ta gets removed. You get what I'm saying? So in one Upadesha, only one letter is being removed. Are you able to understand what I'm saying?
So after the removal of one letter also, it retains the status of Upadesha.
No, Upadesha is always Tumun. After Na is removed, Tumu is not the Upadesha. But Tumu taken as a fragment inside Tumun is Upadesha.
Okay.
Why
You
so,
get what I'm
Mahodaya?
saying? What?
Why so, Mahodaya? Like even if you remove the Itsamya, the remaining part is also told by Panini. Why can't it be taken as an Adyocharanam and taken as
Because
Upadesha?
Tumu has been told inside Tumun. So as long as that Na is sitting over there, Tumu can get an Upadesha Samya. But if Na is removed, Tumu cannot get an Upadesha Samya. But that's not what Panini told. Panini did not tell Tumu. Panini told Tumu inside Tumun. Therefore, slight difference, isn't it? Therefore, it gets an Upadesha Samya. And mind well, we have not yet reached about Tasya Lopaha, okay? We are not removing anything. It is only Halantyam. We are only saying that it is its Samyaka. That's it. We are not yet gone till the removal. A lot of hurdles before we go there. Let's think once again. What is the breakup? Hal and Antyam. What is Hal?
Pratyahara.
Pratyahara.
Okay, what does it indicate?
Vyanjana.
Vyanjana.
Okay. How is the Hal Pratyahara formed?
From Hayavara to Hal.
Yes, but which sutra lets you do that Pratyahara thing?
Adirantena.
Let's break up this particular sutram. Adirantena Sahita.
Adihi.
Padacheda. Adihi.
Antyena.
Antyena.
Saheta.
Saha ita. Adi. Antyena. Saha ita. What does the sutra mean? Antyena ita sah adi. Madhyaganam swatsya cha samya syat. Let's employ this definition on this pratyahara hala. What is happening? How is the hala pratyahara formed? You have those 14 Shiva Sutras, Hayavarat, Lan, and so on up to Shashasar Hal. Okay, let's apply this Adirantyena Sahita. Can somebody walk me through what is exactly happening?
So the Adi Varnaha, ha we take. The Antya
Correct.
is il we take. So what
Okay.
Madhyaganam
Wait. But
from
it's wait. But what is the specific property of that Antyavarna?
it.
It. So Antyavarna is it. So you assume that Lakara is it, then you create the Hal Pratyahara, and you use that Hal Pratyahara to teach me what is it.
No, the sutra itself has the it, right, Mahodaya? Like the hal itself is an it. From there itself, we know it's an it varna. And
Where
then we
itself,
create the pratyahara, right?
where itself we know it is Itvarna?
In the sutra, Maheshwara
अन्योन्याश्रय
Sutra,
दोषः
One sec. Let Nalini talk. What? I didn't understand what you said.
no, I said the il is an itsamya that we know from the sutra itself. Is even before we get into pratyahara, even before we make a pratyahara, we know the lakara is an itvarna. Is what I said.
How do you know? That's what I'm saying. How do you know
Because
that
it's a
Lakara is Itvarna?
sutra, like hal is a Maheshwara Sutra.
Okay.
Like ending, I'm saying, like I'm not talking about the Purva Hakara, but the end of the sutra is what I'm taking, right? Like that Lakara is an Itsamya we know from the, because it's a sutra. In the Maheshwara Sutra also, each sutra, the end Halantyam gets, oh, okay. I think, yeah.
I have one doubt here.
Yes.
If we look at the Maheshwara Sutras, I un, rilrik, eong, ayauch. So even hal, hayavarat is there. Nyamagananam is there. So when we are taking hal, what about these chota itsanyas which are in between? How are we making lopa?
See, you are like jumping many steps ahead. My first question is, how does even
So,
Hal
so
become a Pratyahara?
Mahodaya, are you saying is it the chicken or the egg situation which comes first?
Exactly. Isn't it? Isn't it a chicken or an egg
अन्योन्याश्रय
situation?
दोषः
This is exactly what we call as Anyonyashraya doshaha. Okay, I say you are good, you say I am good. Who is good? Nobody. Because I say you are good and you say I am good. Is tree first or is seed first? A tree causes a seed causes a tree. Understand what I'm saying? Is everybody clear with the fundamental problem? We just take for granted that hala means all the vyanjanas and it is a pratyahara. But in order to define the pratyahara, you need la to be ita, and la cannot become ita unless halantyam is being used. Does everybody understand the problem? Hal. What is hal? It's a
Yeah, oh,
pratyahara.
okay.
How is the pratyahara created? By using la as an itsamyaka. How is la defined to be an itsamyaka? Halantyam. So halantyam is used to define halantyam. Clear?
So Mahoday, are we saying like he should have used like a separate another variable, so to speak, like an intermediate to say what is
Something like that. That is correct. That's what we are trying to say. That he is using a cyclic dependency. He could have used a slightly different mechanism to have a temporary or something and then resolve this dependency in some way.
But in general, but once we have the complete sutra understanding, those temporary things could be removed and we could have, I mean, that's what he's done, right? Like in the finally, so imagine he, instead of hal antyam, he said something like antima, some other, all the vyanjanas or some other way. And then he said antyam. And then later he's able to explain what that, using that, you're able to understand hal is and it's samya also. I mean, like
I understand what you're saying. I understand. Yeah, totally understand. So, Anyonyashraya or interdependency is actually a fundamental component of almost every Shastra. Anytime you start new thing, I'm sure you remember your teacher saying that, please take my words for it, later you will understand. So what do you mean later you will understand? When you go deep in the details and understand a little more advanced topic, you can actually come back and have a better understanding of the original one. So at some point in time, you have to take words for granted from the master, from the teacher. So Anyonyashraya is very common in a lot of Shastras, You might circumvent it, you might just stay with it, whatever, but there is an Anyonyashraya. That's what we are trying to say over here. When you are creating Sutra Patha, having an Anyonyashraya means that validity of one sutra is certified by that sutra itself, which is a problem. In general, Anyonyashraya is not a problem in explaining the things. But when you are trying to capture in formal set of rules, you cannot create rules of mathematics where you will say A will imply A. If A is true, then A is true does not make any sense. If you are formalizing mathematics, formalizing physics, you have to write down a list of steps, one leading to another. That is not being done over here. All that we are saying is Halantyam is true if Halantyam is true. So Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi tosses this question. He doesn't even talk about it. Siddhanta Kaumudi talks about this question and it offers one solution. There are a total of 4 different solutions possible for this particular question. So Mahabhashya discusses all 4. Kaumudi just picks one of them. Mahabhashya actually discusses 5, but we'll ignore one last. It's really stupid. So 4 of them. Okay, so there are 4 different discussions, very beautiful on one of the other. Now understand this. The bottom line is that the sutra is not going anywhere. The Vyakarana Shastra is not dying because such a Anyonyashraya is there. So Halantyam is there. We know the meaning of the Halantyam. We have studied the entire Vyakarana Shastra. But in order to understand how this problem gets resolved, or in order to theoretically resolve this problem, we have some 3, 4, 5 different resolutions. Studying these resolutions will give you a completely different insight in the Vyakarana Shastra altogether. So in order to get that kind of insight, let's understand these resolutions one by one. There are some 4 of them that I want to discuss. We will discuss those and we will stop today so that the discussion of Halantyam would be complete. The first is, understand this carefully. The first resolution is, when you break this word Halantyam, it is not Hal plus Antyam. It is Hal with a double lakara, Hal plus Antyam. Okay, that's the first resolution. Okay. Now the immediate question is, what happened to that second lakara? Why don't I hear it in the sutram? The sutram is not Halantyam, it is Halantyam. So that lakara goes away by Sanyogantasya lopaha. What is Sanyogantasya lopaha? Sanyogantam yat padam tadantasya lopaha bhavati. Right? So Halla is a pada, and the last la will go away by Sanyogantasya lopaha, leaving behind Hala, which then combines with Antyam to form Halantyam. Clear what we have done? We have simply broken it down and we have said Hal is the first word, which consists of 2 entities, Hala and La. Clear? How does that help? We have done something, but how does it help? By saying Hal plus La plus Antyam, we are saying 2 things. First, we are saying that La, which is occurring at the end, is its samyaka. That information is to be used in Hala. So La occurring at the end of Hala is its samyaka. Which Hala? The 14th Shiva Sutram Hala. The 14th Shiva Sutram is Hala. The La occurring at end of that Shiva Sutram is its samyaka. So with this kind of interpretation, now we have only one Itsamyaka letter in the entire Vyakarana Shastra, which is a Lakara, which is occurring at the last Shiva Sutra, Hala. Clear? Now that Lakara is Itsamyaka, you can use Adirantyena Saheta, combine the first Hakara with now known Itsamyaka La to create a Pratyahara called Hala, which includes all the Vyanjanas, and then you come back to Halantyam with the first component, which is Hala Antyam, and say now all the Vyanjanas are Itsamyaka. Clear? Not clear? See, we break down the Sutram Halantyam as Hala and La. So this Sutram says 2 things are Itsamyaka. Hal is Itsamyaka. We don't know what is it, but let's take it for granted. And La is Itsamyaka. The letter La occurring at the end of the Upadesha is Itsamyaka. 2 different things are Itsamyaka. Hala is Itsamyaka and La is Itsamyaka. Why? Because halantyam is broken down into hal and antyam. Double lakara was there. Why double lakara? One of them will go away by sanyogantasya lopaha, so it really doesn't matter. Now, given that la is its samyaka, you apply this information in the 14th Shiva Sutram, hala. La of that Shiva Sutram becomes its samyaka. Because la is its samyaka, that's the sutra, that's what our sutra says. Now that this la becomes its samyaka, you can combine it from the with the top hakara of hayavarata, because adihi antyena itasah madhyaganam swasya cha samya bhavati. So by using adirantyena sahita, you combine the top ha with bottom la to create hala, which is a pratyahara. This hala pratyahara will now consist of all the madhyagas and the adi, which is all the vyanjanas. Use this hala in the halantyam for defining the first part hal, which now means all the vyanjanas are its samyak. Sudhaji.
But he has not written double la in the sutra. He says halantyam. Is he
Okay,
pronouncing halantyam?
let's assume he wrote double lakar. How will you pronounce it?
We don't even know Sanyogaha.
Who don't even know Sanyogaha?
We don't know Sanyoga when we are still talking about Hal, no? That way we don't know it. Sanyoga, what is the definition of Sanyoga comes much later, no?
So
we are
what?
still talking about Ayun, then Sanyoga
No, there is a difference.
Later.
I understand what you're saying. The point
No, but
is
there's no
you are
interdependence.
I think
more
it's a
than
network. So why should we split hairs like this?
Okay, there are too many questions you're asking. Let me answer one by one. So first of all, there is no interdependence. No, there is definitely an interdependence. Halonantara sanyoga. There is an interdependence on the sanyoga and hala also. So that part is aside. Okay. Okay. Now what Vijay Lakshmi is saying is that we don't know the word sanyoga. Obviously, we know the word sanyoga. Understand this point carefully. We are not saying that Ashtadhyayi is ordered in a manner where the first sutram has to be studied and then second sutram has to be studied and then third. That's not how the ordering is done. All that we are saying is interpretation of one sutram cannot depend on another sutram, which itself depends on the first sutram. Is that clear? So cyclic dependency within the sutras are not in the application of the sutras. So sanyogantasya lopaha is just telling the lopa of the sanyoga present at the end. That is all that we are doing when we say hala plus la. When you have hala plus la, the first thing is halantyam gets split up as hala with a double lakara plus antyam. Where is the second lakara going? It is going away by sanyogantasya lopaha. It is not it will never be heard. Even if Panini says halla plus antyam, essentially it will be halantyam because the la is going to go away by sanyogantasya lopaha. So us putting an extra lakara is not going to disturb the sutram at all. We are not saying the sutram becomes halantyam. The sutram remains halantyam. The double lakara, the second la, is going away by sanyogantasya lopaha. This is called prashlesha. Adding an extra letter which does not disturb the configuration is called prashlesha. Prashlesha, extremely common technique. We will use it hundreds of times throughout the discussion of. Wait. Najhalo. Very good. Najhalo. So na a ach jhalo. I don't know whether you have studied Najhalo in your course. I don't think Prashlesha is taught in Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi at all. This is a little advanced stuff. Anyway, but yes, Prashlesha is at so many different places. We'll talk about Prashlesha at various places as we progress our course. Therefore, removing la is not a problem. Sanyogantasya lopaha is not a problem. Having the final sutram as halantyam itself is not a problem. Now coming to the discussion of hair splitting. Yes, this is hair splitting. Entire Vyakarana Shastra is hair splitting. Otherwise, you just take everything that is given to you without asking questions. Asking counter questions and trying to refute what the master has said is at the basis of all the Shastras. let it be vyakarana, vedanta, nyaya, mimamsa, sankhya, yoga, whatever. So asking questions, going into the minutest of the details is at the heart of this whole darshanas, at the heart of all the shastras. So hair splitting is exactly what we are learning. So why hair splitting is a question that doesn't arise. In fact, if there is no hair splitting, we should be questioning why is there no hair splitting over here. So
So
in summary,
one,
just give me 1 minute. Just give me 1 minute. So in summary, the breaking of the sutram is not something that we are doing by by changing the sutram or anything. You retain the sutram and you break it. One last question over here. Did Panini actually mean double lakara over there? No, this is all hair splitting. This is all what we have come up to justify a hypothetical question that was asked. The question of Anyonyashraya was neither asked by Panini, it was not neither answered by Panini. He simply kept Halantyam and he went off. We are the ones who are asking the question and we are the ones who are resolving in some or the other way. So you either don't ask the question or you ask the question, you give some way to justify it. So whether Panini really intended it with a double lakara or a single lakara, of course he did not intend it with double lakara. He meant simple hal plus antyam. Okay, we are trying to do a lot of arguments and counter arguments on the top of it. So in any kind of discussion where going ahead, where we are talking about some aspects of bhashya, some aspects of some other commentaries, question of whether Panini really meant or not are completely inappropriate. The base answer is no, Panini did not mean it. We are the ones who are asking the question and trying to justify it. As long as our justification does not disturb the original sutram. So if the original sutram changes, then we have a question. Did Panini certify it? No, he did not. He says halantyam. You have no business to say halantyam. But we are not saying halantyam. We are saying halantyam. That lo is actually double lakara which goes away by one of the sutram Panini has given. Sanyogantasya lopaha. So we are actually using his sword against him by saying it's actually halantyam. Lo goes away. Hal plus antyam, halantyam. And by doing that, we are trying to somehow answer a question that the Purva Paksha has raised.
I was thinking over this as hair splitting and cyclical dependency, and one thing that also is important is not only to explain the words that are present, but all the possible combination of the word that may come from, like nutananam varnanam agamanam api bhavati kalu. That is also we can fit in that framework and be able to explain. So this becomes more fluid than become rigid. That is how I look at it.
That is correct. So this actually becomes more fluid because now see, before this discussion, you never had an idea that the sutram can be split up like this, isn't it? This is a new
Mahodaya.
information. Now you're going to use it to somewhere else.
So
महोदय हल् ल् अन्त्यम् इति यदि कुर्मः चेत् समासः भवति वा अत्र हल् हलः ल अन्त्यं वा अथवा हल्
Halcha lacha, halcha lacha, hal. Halcha lacha, hal. Idhar. Okay. And there is no dvivachanam because in samasa you don't use dvivachanam on the purva pada. It's just pratipadikas that undergo samasa. Before any further questions, let me actually show this. I mean, I'm not talking anything from my brain. This is I'm not allowed to. So let's actually see. Lakara nirdeshaha kartavyaha is basically he's writing in a very cryptic manner. You need a teacher to explain this. But basically he says halantyam itsamyam bhavati iti uchyate lakaraseva tavad itsamya na prapnoti. So this is his way of showing the anyonyashraya. And he says, well, that can be resolved by saying doing the lakara nirdesha. What kind of lakara nirdesha? Halantyam lakarascha. So basically, hal and la, you combine them together is what he's saying. Halantyam itsamyakam bhavati lakarascha iti vaktavya. It may be not be very obvious to you, but this is what it means. You need to study it properly to understand. But it basically means hala plus la becomes itsamyaka. This is the split of the sutram in one way. There are three more ways. I don't think we'll go to this today, but there are many such ways of explaining this.
Mahodaya, one clarification. So in one of our very early classes, when we were talking about the Shaundadigana and the Saptami Tat Purusha, we learned this technique of Yoga Vibhaga to justify why he says it is Saptami Tat Purusha, whereas we would normally think otherwise. So here also, this is just a way of justification or justifying that Panini didn't get it wrong, that he got it right. So this is one of the, you said there are 4 ways to do it. So this is one technique to justify the correctness of Panini's sutra.
That is absolutely right. The precise word for this that scholars use is device. D-E-V-I-C-E, device. A device is a technique employed by later grammarians to answer the questions for proving Panini meant something in this manner and not in this manner.
एतत्तु
Prakarshagati is
तन्त्रः
one. Kim?
तन्त्रः किल एतत्
Tantra is, I'm just talking about the English word. Tantram ityeva shabdaha. So one of the examples was the Prakarshagati. It's a tantram, it's a device. Another example is Yoga Vibhaga. It's a device. Third example is this Prashlesha. What we did just now is called Prashlesha. Is a device. So these are techniques, tantrani, for justifying the soundness of the Vyakarana Shastra. See, Panini wrote 4,000 sutras and he went away. He is not going to come back to tell us whether what he wrote meant what and what not and so on. So it's all our game of, logical analysis that goes ahead. That teaches a lot. So we learned one beautiful technique called Prashlesha, which you can use in 100 other places. You don't use, Bhashyakara has used this and you understand it easily in 100 other places, isn't it? It is more important to understand the problem, and appreciate the efforts done to solve the problem, rather than saying whether the solution is logically appeals to you or it doesn't appeal to you. Appealing is too personal. So this is what traditions have been studying for years together. This is what is there in Mahabhashyam. Scholars have no issues with this. So this is one of the acceptable arguments.
Little digression. So this is how any shastra is kind of laid threadbare and dissected.
Are you rethinking now of your decision of entering the shastras?
No.
Yes, this is exactly how all the shastras are.
Including Vedas.
I believe so. Yeah, Vedas is like hell. Like Mimamsa Shastram is like one big hell of a thing. And see, Vyakarana Shastra, nobody attacks you, right? I mean, who will attack the Sutram Halantyam? It's students who are studying Vyakarana Shastra. Vedas is different. Vedas, it's about dharma. So Buddhas and Jainas and Charvakas, they are like going to attack it furiously. So refuting sentences in Vedas is even a bigger task than refuting sentences in Vyakarana. Vyakarana, how is Halantyam broken down? Who cares outside this small group, right? But when it comes to Vedas, it is style of life, it is dharma. So huge debate and huge fights. So Mimamsa is much more into these kind of hair splitting than what Vyakarana is. So your choice of Vyakarana is actually better, lesser hair splitting. This is fun, complex, unnecessarily hair splitting.
If anything, it is thought provoking, right? It's asking you to question.
Exactly. That is the whole point. It is thought provoking. It is asking you to question. That is at the base of all these shastras. Ask questions. And that is the reason I decided to take this class of just 15-20 people. I want to encourage asking questions. I don't do that. I don't let people ask questions in other classes. I'm afraid I won't be able to answer them. So, but here it's okay.
Different approach. I mean, you're not just learning the sutras and moving on. You're questioning.
Exactly. And you will not learn that in a normal Laghu Kaumudi or a Kaumudi class. This is something that only happens through a live interaction. And that is exactly the heart of our Shastras. Encouraging to ask questions and not saying a question is stupid, but coming up with a technique, which might be as stupid as the question, but come up with a technique to answer that question.
But in that process, we are actually making the sutra stronger. The validity is strengthened by doing it.
Yes. Yes. So it's essentially dissecting the sutras in and out and making sure that they remain in their place even after such a dissection happens. Correct. So this is how whole of our course is going to go. Like each sutra we are going to do. I mean, there won't be Anyonyasva everywhere. Otherwise, there's a big pain in the neck. But everywhere there'll be something on the other that we will try to bring up and try to ask a question justified by using one or the other techniques, the tantras devices. So we will stop here. Out of the 4 techniques, I only covered one today, Lakar Prashleshaha. There is a second technique, Ekashesha. There is a third very beautiful technique using a Gunasandhi. There is a 4th technique given by Siddhanta Kaumudi by repeated mention of the sutram. We will talk about these multiple techniques in the next class. Okay. I'll still wait for a few minutes, 1 minute, 2 minutes, if there are any, concluding questions. Otherwise, we can finish for today. We'll stop for today.
But this is a very refreshing approach, because a lot of the times when you question the sutram, you say, "Oh, you never question Paniniya sutram." I mean, it's always
You have to
assumed.
question, yeah. And this is what our Shastras have done, right? Mahabhashya, all that he does is questions Panini. Understand this. Every Shastram has a Bhashyam. Nyaya has a Bhashyam. Mimamsa has a Bhashyam. Yoga has a Bhashyam. There is a fundamental difference between those Bhashyas and these Bhashyas. If you take Nyaya Sutra Bhashyam or Mimamsa Sutra Bhashyam, these are like commentaries on the sutras. They will explain the meaning of the sutram. They will explain various examples, aspects, and all that. Patanjali does not do any of that. He puts Panini on the knife and he says, why have you done this? Why have you done this? Why have you done this? It's all logical analysis. That's why we end up calling this as Mahabhashyam. Not just the Bhashyam. Bhashyam is just a commentary. No other stream will call their Bhashyam as Mahabhashyam. Only Vyakarana Shastra calls it as Mahabhashyam because it does. Looking at Mahabhashyam, you will not learn about the sutra at all, because every decision of Panini has been questioned in the Mahabhashyam. Not just questioned, the decision is questioned and then we somehow justified that Panini was right by creating that sutra. This is a logical discussion, and therefore for studying the sutras we need to refer to Siddhanta Kaumudi or Kashika, whereas for doing the logical analysis it is the Bhashyam that you should resort to. So if possible, read about the Maheshwara, read about the Halantyava and see what are the remaining techniques that Bhashyakara gives you. I don't expect you to understand much. I'm there to explain next week. But if you're interested, just read and see what other techniques that he gives. Some very beautiful techniques that he will give. And more than validity of these techniques, try to learn the ingenuity or whatever creativity that Bhashyakara has put in. That teaches us a lot. We can reuse that somewhere else.